welcome to the Chartered Show, Season 3, Episode 2. On today's show, I'm joined by Jason Appel, and he's going to be discussing whether to rent or to buy. And our second segment is with Tom Brukman, and we are going to be discussing mental impairment. So sit back and enjoy the show. By Jason Appel, financial planning specialist from our Durban branch. Jason, so nice having you here in Joburg and that you could be on the show with me today.
It's great to be in Joburg and thanks for having me on the show.
I asked Jason to put together some content on whether to buy or to rent. What brought it about was one of our clients was moving back from Scotland to South Africa. And before they bought, they thought it would be a good idea to rent a property and just check in which area they wanted to live. And so we put this article together with the content and so it's evolved. And I thought I would get Jason in on the show so I could ask him some more questions about it. So Jason, first of all, thank you for putting together an article on whether you should rent or buy and for joining me to share. So maybe just to kick it off, I know you've gone through a big transition moving to Durban to start our branch. Have you bought or are you renting?
No, we decided to rent. It was a conscious decision because we were relocating provinces. Although I know Durban from a place to go on holiday, I've never lived there before. So it was very important for us to get a feel for the schools, the community, the churches, the infrastructure, proximity to the office. All those things were quite important before we invest, because investing in a property is a big financial commitment and a big decision. So we're renting at the moment.
And I know for many of us, and I know myself included, I like to own my house because the thought of somebody else telling me that I have to leave after a certain amount of time is scary. And we always have this conversation, is our house an asset? So maybe, Jace, we could just go into some of the thinking that went into the article and the different scenarios of people that maybe it's better off to rent or maybe better to buy.
Yeah, these topics come up in meetings all the time. Property is quite an emotive thing, especially for South Africans. We love bricks and mortar. We love to own our houses. This concept of renting is this thing, it's kind of hammered into us from a young age. You're just paying off somebody else's bond. So we think it's a poor decision off the bat. We kind of dismiss it. And yes, there's lots of fantastic things about property ownership. And it does give you that security, as you said. You don't want to be kicked out of the property. You want to have the security. You can hammer nails to the walls, do whatever you want to do, paint it pink if you want to. But there is really sometimes a case for renting, and I've run those scenarios for a few clients. Mainly when they're transitioning from one province to another. Maybe it's around circumstances in your life. You need a big house right now because you still have children, adult children dependents, or an elderly parent living with you. So you think, well, I need to move, let me buy a 4-bedroom house so I can still cater for that. But those aren't long-term things. They won't be with you forever. Then you end up with this large house, expensive to maintain, and you might invariably make the wrong decision because you're making a decision from the wrong viewpoint. And often this is where scenarios come into play, as you actually run the numbers for clients to see what actually works out better for them from a lifestyle perspective and also from a financial perspective.
Because I think it can be quite an emotional topic. When you do bring it up, especially as you say, when you're going through a transition and then you rush. I know sometimes I've been with clients whose partners have passed away and they go straight away, well, I can't live in this big house anymore and I need to move. And then those kind of conversations do come up as well.
Yeah, with all things, you always said when you go through transitions, you make emotional decisions as well because there's so much emotion. I had a client who in her 70s was looking to change areas and to buy a new property, and we had conversation around downscaling. I really encouraged her to downscale for financial reasons and lifestyle reasons, but she went and bought an even bigger house. And she ended up buying a house that had a cracked foundation, and she had to spend all this money to repair the house. So she ended up regretting the decision after she'd gone through this whole kind of emotion, the joy of having this prestigious asset. And for me, it just hit home the importance of really trying to take the emotion out of it, look at it from a practical and also a financial standpoint, and kind of almost have a bit of negotiation with yourself. Say, yes, I'm giving up some space in my home, but what else am I getting?
And I think on that, I mean, I know going through emptiness now, a conversation, I know my house is too big for me. I know potentially maybe in a couple of years I might move to a different area. But if I had to sell my home and I would still be staying in Johannesburg, potentially that's a good time to rent until you really decide where you're going to go.
Yeah, it is a great idea. I mean, I've got clients relocating to the Cape now, and they're going to move into a property that they currently own. They're fortunate enough to have a property there. So they're going to be staying in their, it's not their forever home, but it's a temporary home where they're going to just live, and they're going to get to know Cape Town and different suburbs. And ultimately they will sell that home and they'll go to what they would say their last property, their forever home.
And I think it is good to get to know areas, and 100%. A great way to get to know areas before you do the buying is actually to be renting. I know, Jason, also when we do the scenario planning for some clients that aren't fortunate enough, maybe when they get older they don't have enough money, and they're running out of income, and then we suggest that they sell their properties. Maybe talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, so a lot of clients, they've owned the same property for many years. They've built up a lot of equity in their properties. So they sell their properties, they get the cash out, and they invest the cash. And then we run the scenarios for them if they then kind of downscale to something that still meets their needs, and they actually rent. They take that investment capital and they rent. There's two benefits to that. Is, okay, firstly, you get an equity out, and sometimes you can find a really reasonable rental, and you now don't have all the maintenance costs that come with the property. Because if you rent, you're really just paying a rental, and you're paying your water and your lights. You don't have to pay maintenance, you don't have to pay levies and all that stuff. So there's a cost saving involved in renting as well, which we can't ignore. Sometimes there's a big benefit to that as well.
And I mean, on that, I mean, we say there's a cost saving. We've always had the conversation, because so many people made a lot of money on their homes, but with different properties going down in different areas, we're not really always able to say that it's a good asset.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real mixed bag, especially in different parts of South Africa now. You know, you have changing areas, you've got, businesses coming in, people moving out, going overseas. You don't really know when you're investing in property. It's quite high risk whether the area is going to be this new up and coming area. So sometimes the safer bet is to rather rent before you purchase, and you can get a real feel for whether this area is great. I mean, I had an experience like that in Johannesburg where I purchased my house that I just sold, and we sold it for less than we bought it for, even though we thought we bought it for a great price.
Because you were needing to move, so it's
I was needing to move, so it just took away that flexibility of me being able to go, which is another advantage to the rental, is that you have more flexibility to come and go as you please. So if you are considering like immigrating, for example, like buying a property, even if you think you can have it for the next 5 years, is probably not the best decision, because it takes a long time before your property value grows to a point that you can maybe make a profit out of it.
Because properties have changed. So I think in conclusion, Jace, just maybe to share with us one tip that you would suggest people do when they're considering whether they should rent or buy.
Yeah, to consider to rent or buy, I think it's, you definitely should sit down with your financial planner and just crunch the numbers. I looked at it from a viewpoint as what is the rental relative to the value of that property. And because I'd have to own the property, and as a young person, I haven't got the equity yet to buy the property outright, I worked out, well, what is the bond cost, the cost to finance the property if I was to do it as a finance deal through a bank. And if I could rent at a lower value than the bond repayment, it made financial sense to me, because I could then take the savings I have and save it. If you translate that to a retired client who's living off investments, is if you can have a saving to rent, and then you have some surplus money left over that you can leave in your investments to grow and compound, you're still building equity, even though you might not have the property anymore. So that's a good consideration, is to say, well, am I overcapitalizing and I'm putting myself in financial pressure buying a property? If so, then consider the rental.
So I think from our side, thank you very much for joining us today on the show, Jace. I'd also just like to say, at no time are we saying whether it's better to buy or to rent. What we are saying is have the discussions, try and take the emotions out. And that's why it's really good to work with your financial planning specialist to help you to run those scenarios and help you be more objective in your decision making. Thank you. We're noticing lately with clients that often they're getting confused when we're having certain conversations with them. And now we need to know, what do we do when these kind of matters arise? So I've asked Tom to come in and chat to us about what to do and what are the signs that you look out for. So Tom, thank you very much for coming onto the Chartered Show today and really sharing quite a sensitive topic. And it is a really sensitive topic because I just know for myself, first of all, we never really want to face up to the fact that we're aging. We feel the same way as we did feel before. And sometimes when things are confusing us, we're ignoring it too. So, and I know for the planners, this is a difficult subject. So thank you, Tom, for saying you'd share about
thanks,
it.
Kevin. Lovely to be here. Always appreciate being on the show. It is something that I've experienced very recently with clients. And this mental incapacity you speak about, I think a lot of people might think, dementia, and that is certainly something that affects a lot of people globally. And it's becoming more prevalent. And in that space where clients are confused or forgetful, it's really important that for us as planners, we need to know our clients. So we only would know if they are forgetful, confused, if we understand who they are, what they need, what's important to them. And as soon as that happens, I think there's a sort of very grey area maybe from is it something we should be worried about or not? And there's obviously legal stuff involved, which we'll get to a bit. But it's really about making sure that you start recording what's been happening. Those instances where you're not so sure if it is the decisions are sound or the conversations are what they used to be. And then eventually you need to get the family involved. You need to say, I know it's sensitive, but I want to let you know that when discussing X topic or when talking about your parents' plans or estate plans or wills.
So maybe, Tom, just to take you back a little bit, because, to get to that stage, to get the family involved, I know many of the conversations that we have with clients in the beginning, when they're a lot younger, we go, this could happen, and we all want to believe it's never going to happen to us. So when you say get the family involved, do you do it at a stage that you've actually asked the person permission to get the family involved?
I think it's absolutely important you try bring it up and you have a courageous conversation with your client to say, is there anything you'd like to share? Have you noticed anything? The reason I say that is generally when we talk about X, you seem to be more engaged or something, you have different answers or you have more, you understand what's going on more, whatever the case is.
And I suppose the partner, because we see couples, if you're in a couple, we see you together, we'll also give you a little bit of a heads up that it's happening.
Yeah, so you'll potentially get a phone call from the spouse saying, I just thought that my spouse wasn't really the same, didn't have the understanding that he usually does, or he asked a question I thought was strange, or did you find it strange? So
and
you
I
get
suppose
these
nice
signs
to support them as well, because often if you go to your partner and you're saying those things, your partner won't be listening at all, but you're able to support the partner too.
Absolutely, and they need to know that they're not making this up, that it's not a story in their head, that it's a real, it is a real thing if that is what's happening. And there's a lot of denial around mental incapacity, we know that, and it can take various forms and it can take different timelines, long timelines, so it's not an easy one to sort of come to terms with. So you really want to support the spouse and support people and be honest about it. And then, as you say, going on to family is to say, who are going to be the people that are going to need to come in to assist? And when we say assist, there's so many levels, sure, but it's certainly, we as the planner have got to be really conscious around decisions that are being made that have financial impact for the family. And if those are really the kind of decisions that should be being made or not, and what state the person's in.
Because we don't want the plans to be sabotaged. So Tom, maybe let's go to what are the steps. So when you notice this happening, you say you call the family in, but now what can the family do? I know we talk about power of attorneys, but there's times when they work and there's times when they don't work. So I think maybe just for the listeners, share around the power of attorney, when it's useful and when you need to go to the next stage.
Yeah, so there's, as I said, there's a legal element to this, and there's different legislation, let's say the Mental Illness Act or the Administration of Estates Act, or whatever it may be, that can deal with various situations. But practically, what you want at the start, I think, is you want the person who is dealing with the mental incapacity that they're going through to understand that there's going to be a practical element to managing their life. And what I mean by that, I mean a bank account, for instance. So who has the ability to help you or that person with a bank account? There's power of attorneys that can be signed, and family can be involved to help with that.
But that's
element.
only if they...
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to bring in an example here from a colleague of ours. So a colleague of ours, her father's been sort of formally medically diagnosed with dementia, but early onset, and she has been assisting and trying to be involved. He is in a bit of a denial, apparently, or the parent is in denial, and he has got a power of attorney with our colleague, his daughter, but he's forgotten that he's got one. And she is luckily a lawyer, but she knows that because he doesn't have the capability to remember there's a power of attorney, to revoke it, essentially, to say, I don't want you anymore. So in legal terms, that doesn't apply anymore.
So now she knows she has to take the next step.
Yeah.
And that next step?
The next step, there are options. So there's options from a legal point of view, and it's about finding the option that suits you. Some come with greater costs, more admin involved, and more courts maybe, or offices that need to be approached to appoint people. Their trusts, potentially, if they're existing trusts, and how to use a trust to help. So it really is a sort of case by case, like a lot of these situations seem to be. But it's really important that you seek that kind of advice, and it comes from a legal sense. And I suppose at Chartered, because of the clients we deal with, we've dealt a lot with different people that understand and specialize in this space, and it's important to have those conversations.
So Tom, what I'm hearing is there's a lot of sensitivity.
Yeah.
There's also the denial part, and then there's the actual action steps that you need to take, and sooner rather than later when you're taking these action steps.
Absolutely, and it's not easy, and I think potentially to get a medical opinion that there's mental incapacity that's being diagnosed, that can help. You know, a lot of people are denial just to even go and get checked up and to see where they stand. And,
so your role even is to point out in the family to go and get that diagnosis. And just for the listeners, we have organized for Dr. Ryan Fuller, who's the dementia psychiatrist, to come in and do a talk for us on this. So please look out for that invitation if this is something that you need more information on.
Yeah.
So
that's
Tom,
good.
I mean, yeah, I think it was great. I mean, it was great for us to learn more and potentially to help some of the clients and some of the clients' children as well in understanding this, so that everybody can help each other. Maybe share another story for us, because I think the stories always help us to recognize the involvement that we each need to play in these kind of situations.
Yes, as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, that I recently met with a client. She took herself to a professional medical practitioner because she felt she was confused a lot of the time, and they diagnosed her with early onset dementia, and she immediately told her children, and they both live overseas, they're adult children, they live overseas, they came out. I met with the whole family, and she has taken the approach that she's happy now to devolve responsibility on a lot of her decisions to her children, because she doesn't want to be a burden. Yeah, so it's very courageous. And so but it is still decisions that have to be made. Her intention with many things, and the children are discovering what's possible in helping legally and practically with our guidance.
And also they're so far away.
And they're far away, so you know, they're looking at facilities and she's, I don't want to be a burden, I don't want my children to have to worry about me. So she's making all these decisions
and she's
now.
choosing.
And so it's different. So she's handled it in a way that probably is, as you say, courageous and very proactive, very, very proactive.
Because it's heartbreaking. I mean, we have seen other situations where the person is saying, this is not true, this is not happening to me. And then the family feel like they're forcing it. So very courageous.
Yeah. So it was a very courageous and a different scenario, but it was good. But there's still a lot to discuss, even if the person has accepted it and proactive. There are a lot of elements to this that you've just got to make sure people are aware of, and that everyone's on the same page.
Thank you, Tom, very much for sharing with us. If you or anyone in your family might be suffering from mental impairment, what we recommend is that you really do chat to your financial planning specialist. The more your financial planning specialist knows about your family, is the more input they could give and the more care and support they can give. Thank you, Tom, very much for joining me today and being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Chartered Show. Please feel free to like, comment or share, and we look forward to you joining us in the next episode.